All right, welcome back, guys. Today we are meeting with Richard. I'm going to let him introduce himself. This is part of the series that I am doing where people have raised their hand to be coached. And you will notice through this call, it's coaching consulting, really, is what's going on because we might offer Richard some tools or set up some strategies for him. And then we're also doing the mindset work. So, Richard, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Richard Avena. I am a 46-year-old who lives here in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a caregiver for my father, who's 88, and primarily I'm a songwriter, musician, and it's what I do. It's my passion. But other than that, in order to make ends meet, I've worked in call centers, things like that. But for the most part, I've always been, very into creativity. So things like, short story writing, things like that as well. I'm a big fan of literature. And for me, I was first diagnosed with attention deficit disorder way back in, I want to say probably like 88, 89. I was probably like 11 or 12. So, even back then, I feel that we've come a long way since then about just, so much about learning about how ADHD minds work, maybe new
Absolutely.
treatment, things like that. But for me, it's always been a big struggle. I've always compared it, like I once told somebody that it's like having your left arm and your right leg tied behind your back, trying to live that way and trying to
Mm.
do stuff because it's very difficult. And unfortunately, over the years, I had, kind of resorted to like substance abuse, self medication, just because of all the emotional things that go along with getting frustrated from not being able to have kind of a neurotypical mindset. There's so many things that a lot of times we want to do that we just feel, it's really hard for us to do because of the way our minds work. And so lately, I've been trying a lot more to be a lot more sympathetic towards my mind, not kind of be as like, oh, I have my mind is like this, and it's always going to be a struggle, and I hate my mind. I realize that this is how my mind is, and it's just now it's a matter of focusing on trying to do things that will help me, you know, various techniques, any kind of just little things that can help me out, and make it easier. I know I'll always have ADHD. I'm definitely one of those people who never ever got any benefit from medications. The medications don't work. I've tried all the non-stimulants and everything. So I realize now it's got to be more of an organic thing. So for me, it's real important to do that, and I want to be able to do that. I'm 46, and it's been a struggle. It's like I said, holding me back my whole life, but I feel that now that I can address it and kind of make it, an important thing that I can really focus on, that I feel that, I over the if I'm able to learn different things, it's just going to make my life a little bit easier.
Yeah,
It,
very good. Very good. Okay. And we were speaking a little bit before I hit record. And one thing that you mentioned that you wanted to work on was the emotional dysregulation, time management, and task initiation. And are you currently working? You said sometimes you do call centers. I know you're caring for your father.
no, not right now. I'm currently not working.
Okay. And so your time management is around what?
Well, that's the thing. So it's one of the things about my time management that's so odd is I find myself uh, for using I guess it's a new colloquialism called bed rotting, which is laying in bed and not being able to kind of get started on things. So I do that a lot. It's very difficult. My father, he's for the most part I would say about 90% independent. I do little things, but throughout the day, it's very hard for me to like start things, finish them, things like that. And I just find myself just being really like, I'll be like watching YouTube or whatever for hours sometimes, and it really, that causes a lot of frustration, a lot of guilt. So for me, time management would be like, I would like to be able to have, maybe a like a schedule based on, how when I wake up, I'm going to do this at this time, and then I'm going to do this at this time. Kind of like a, kind of like a schedule for the 24 or 12 hours that you're awake.
Hmm.
And I've actually looked at some of these online. There's actually been some interesting little online worksheets that are, like a 12-hour thing that you can kind of fill in. Okay, at this time I'm going to get up and I'm going to eat breakfast from here to here. And then after that, I'd like, I want to, check emails, things like that from this time to this time, and just have more structure throughout the day, because a lot of times it just feels like there's just a lot of wasting time for me. And that's a problem.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm hearing you say routines are what you
Yeah.
need.
Definitely.
That was the biggest thing for me. I'll share with you personally. When I was trying to learn to manage my time, I came across I believe it was a psychologist where he said you can't be mentally healthy without a routine. And I really looked at my life and I was like, do I have routines? Like we have routines as humans. Like we will tend to do the same thing every day, even if it is, laying in bed or watching YouTube or that kind of thing. But yes, so I can see how that would be very emotionally dysregulating. You're probably a little bit upset with yourself every day. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just there's a lot of shame and guilt just for feeling of how there's so much that I could be doing that I'm not doing, and that towards the end of the day, there is a lot of kind of this shame and, like, I just wasted the whole day, and I could have been, doing these things. I have gotten a little bit better with it recently because I have been trying to be more mindful. I just started this within the last 3 or 4 days,
No.
really trying to hone in my mindfulness skills, and it helps a little bit. And I'm trying to like spend at least an hour and a half, 2 hours each day working on music stuff, no matter what time it is, but trying to like make it at least 2 hours each day,
Okay.
so maybe 30, and then an hour over here, and then another 30 minutes. But
Yeah.
for me, to feel productive, like I've actually gotten something done, um, it is very hard for me to do that if I don't have any kind of a structure. And one of the things that actually my own mother always said, and I think it's probably very true for ADHD people, is that when we have like these structures, it really helps us a lot. And one of the things of having a structure is uh, full-time job, and it's been very difficult to kind of do that with being a caregiver. But when I have been able to do it while being my father's caregiver for the last 3 or 4 years, there has been a lot more. It's been a lot easier for me. The day seems like, I've accomplished something by working 8 hours. I'm making an income, so then I feel a little bit more fulfilled. So when you're just like a caregiver and you're just here kind of in case you're needed, it's very, and you find it very hard to start things and finish them. That's when the shame and the guilt and that kind of stuff starts coming up.
Yeah. So let's go back to the last time you weren't able. I don't know if we're using weren't able, but you didn't get out of bed when you hoped you would. One
Mhm.
important thing with ADHD, and nobody likes to hear this, but I'm going to say it. We really need to be going to bed the same time every day and getting up the same time every day. What is your experience with that?
Actually, that is pretty, my sleep pattern. The only thing I would say that's kind of probably not great about my sleep pattern is I probably sleep too much. I know I do. And because I do suffer from depression as well. But for the most part, I do go to bed around the same time each night, around 9 o'clock, and try to
Perfect.
get up around 9 a.m. And the 12 hours I sleep, it's a lot of times I think it is probably based on depression and just wanting to go to sleep, because when you have depression you want to sleep a lot. But
Mhm.
I have noticed that whenever I do have a shorter amount of time sleeping, like say instead of 12 hours, like 7 to 8, uh, and I've tried to do that continuously, like maybe go to bed at 9 or 10 and wake up at 7 or 8, the next day, or 6 even, that when I do that, I feel like I feel a lot better. I feel a lot more energy, and even also probably more like just ability to focus and things like that. So it's hard to do though, because you get lazy and you think, trying to do it each night at, I'm going to go to bed at 11 and get up at 7 a.m. It's been very difficult. So that's why I would say, like, whenever I have had jobs I would that would actually work out the best way, because if I worked at like 8 a.m., I would go to bed at like 11 or 12, and I'd have my whole thing where I'd get up at 7 a.m. and just get ready to go to work, and then I'd be good. But when you don't have a structured thing, it's kind of it's you're not as easy to set those kind of scheduled
Okay.
time.
We're going to talk about what an ideal morning routine would look like for you, and I don't want this to be what you think other people are doing or what you think would be the perfect thing to do. I just want it to be something that's going to feel good to you.
Mm-hmm.
So we will talk about that. But the first thing I want to do is let's make a commitment to reducing that sleep just a little bit. And
Okay.
were we working long term? This is a one-time session, right?
Yeah.
But were we working long term, we would keep going back to that and kind of pushing it back, pushing it back. But I just want it to be something reasonable for you right now. So if we were to reduce that sleep a little bit, what time could you get out of bed?
Oh, easily at 8 a.m.
Okay.
Yeah,
8
easily.
a.m. Feeling, even if you're feeling down, would that work? 8 a.m.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of times I end up forcing myself to get up, and I if I do have a little bit of depression in the morning, I find that as I get up and do stuff, it tends to kind of go away. So
Okay,
I
so
yeah.
we're making a commitment here today to start doing 8 a.m. If
Hmm.
that becomes challenging, let's do 8:30. And then you're gonna on your own push it back to what works for you. Now,
Okay.
with this morning routine, we want a good reason to get out of bed.
Hmm.
What would be a good reason? And what is something you could do every day that you could kind of jump out of bed for? What would that be?
That's a good question. Um, well, now that it's still pretty hot down here in South Texas, but in the past, I have done pretty well with doing my exercise routines first thing in the morning. So usually, like any kind of hiking, or yeah, I usually do like an hour hike around the neighborhood. And now that it's still hot during the day, but in the morning it is still it's nice. It's gotten nicer and a lot less humid. So that time of the day would actually be perfect for getting up and hiking
Okay,
or
any
walking.
yeah, so getting out for a walk, a hike, any obstacles to that that you would foresee?
No, the only thing would be if I ended up getting a new job that had a morning schedule where I'd have to kind of tweak that, or if there was any kind of like a doctor's appointment that my father, needed to go to or something like that early on.
Okay, and that's not gonna be super often, right? Well, the
Right.
job
No.
yeah, and the job you would just adjust.
Yeah.
And plus you're putting structure in your life with that job as well. Okay, so exercising first thing, what would happen after that?
So then I would kind of come back. Uh, I would work on things that need to be done that I would find to be important. So that would be like checking emails about uh, various things. Like right now, I'm I'm having this situation with a debt creditor that they wanted me to they're kind of well they're suing me, I guess, but I'm working with them to do it. So one of those things where like it's kind of an important thing, that I always like to take care of important things first thing and knock them out. So any kind of thing that I have to work on or make a phone call, or wait on hold for, and then also things like commitments that I make to other people for. A lot of times I prefer to do those in the morning. So like, whether it's help my mother out, with her yard, or help a friend out, with something they need. I always tend to like to do that in the morning. Sometime like in the later part of the morning.
Okay, very
So
good.
yeah.
How much time would you give something like that?
Usually, I would say at least a couple hours, maybe
Okay.
2 to 3 hours. Yeah, because I do like to. I like to knock stuff out, when I can, and then the thing is I'd like to be able to use the rest of the day for other things that are the most important things like music and composing and stuff like that.
We were going to get to
Um,
that. Yes.
yeah.
Okay. How are your meals? Are your meals pretty regularly scheduled?
Yeah, they are. Um, I'm on this new medication called Alvelti. It's an antidepressant, and it's got this interesting side effect where my appetite has been reduced, which has actually been kind of good because I've been losing weight. I've been lost about 10 pounds in the last 6 weeks. So I do find it very difficult to eat in the morning, but I do know that a lot of people tell me you really should try to eat the first thing in the morning. But a lot of times I'll just go until the afternoon, and I usually eat maybe around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mhm.
and that's usually like my main meal. So it's if it's something like a sandwich and chips or like spaghetti or something like that, it's usually my biggest meal, and then I usually don't eat for the rest of the day. It's usually about once a day.
Okay. A lot of people do like the one meal a day thing.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay. Music and composing. Where does that fit in your day and how long does it take?
Well, that's the thing. I since this, I will be honest in this because I think it's important that it used to be towards the end of the evening, and unfortunately, it would always kind of have something like alcohol involved. There'd always be some kind of substance involved to kind of get the creative juices going. Now
Mhm.
that I'm not doing that anymore, I still like the evening, for that time, for things like, playing guitar or working with the keyboard or something like that. For me, the evenings have always been the best time for me. I think I would say, like, concentration, focus wise, and emotionally. For whatever reason, I thrive more after 7, 8 p.m., so I'm able to just do things a lot more, better. And then probably, I would say in the late morning and then throughout the day is when I have a lot more struggle with focus and things. So I would say that music and any creative stuff is probably, I would like it to be more towards the evening time. So 6 or 7, maybe.
Okay. If this was your morning routine and you were, helping out your father throughout the day as needed and you had your music and composing in the evening, what's missing? Is there anything missing from your day to day?
Um, Really not much. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm not married. I don't have kids or anything like that. So it really, being a caregiver, you're kind of just here in case something happens. And so but at the same time, so we have like that morning, I kind of like, I have the morning, an idea of what the morning would look like, and then I have an idea towards the evening. And in that middle time, I guess that's where I kind of struggle a lot because there's not, I don't know what to be doing. I
Yeah.
don't know whether I should be, maybe part of me is kind of thinking about going back to school. So maybe, looking at that, or, well, if one thing would be taking my dad to probably doctor's appointments because they're usually in the afternoon. So usually about an hour or two is filled up with that. But then there's a good chunk of 3 to 4 hours that, is not, that it's just there for anything. So
Yeah. So it sounds like you're feeling kind of untethered when you don't have like a doctor's appointment to take your dad to or something like that.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a great way of putting it.
Okay. So what are some goals that you've had maybe previously or you have currently that you could be working towards?
That's a good question. I'm glad you asked that. The most important thing right now for me, out of anything else in my life, aside from the basic things like being, trying to stay healthy physically and working on my mental health, is to um, perform more live. I've always struggled a lot with that. I'm a very, very, it's very hard for me to perform live, and it's very hard to get the motivation and to do it because I'm overwhelmed with so many negative thoughts, and it gets to be so overwhelming. So for me, that is probably the most important thing right now, is because I do feel that, I so many people, my family and everybody always tell me, you're so talented and everything. Why don't you perform live? And it's kind of hard to explain that to people when you have things like major anxiety. It's not everybody's just able to get up on stage and just do it, and just be like Mick Jagger or something.
Were
So
you the one on YouTube that I commented on your video and said, "How come we can't see you?"
yeah, that was me. Yeah, that's me. So that's the
I was
thing.
looking at my followers and I came across your video where you were doing music, but it just had an image up, and I kind of had an inkling that you were kind of hiding behind the image.
Oh
So
yeah,
that's
yeah. That's always been a big thing because to me, I really feel that if I can if I can do performance, that's going to open so many doors for me in terms of just like being able to make a living off of it, maybe make it as a central means of income and really make it my livelihood, which is of
yeah.
course what I would like to do.
Okay,
Um,
what are your opportunities in your area or near area for performing live? Where could you do that?
Um, there are quite a few. There's a lot of places here. There are a lot of like little bars and little coffee shops that I know that if I were to reach out, that I could schedule some kind of, get in there to play like, an hour, hour and a half or whatever on certain nights. We also have quite a lot of, San Antonio is a real big city. So we have a lot of places that do open mic nights, where people can come and perform,
Okay.
a couple of songs, things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity for sure.
Okay, so let's talk about your tasks in the afternoon around this. And then I want to jump into the mindset piece so that we
Okay.
can get rid of some of that anxiety and overwhelm that you're feeling. It's caused by your thinking, right? There's some
Yeah.
thought. I mean, of course, for anybody watching, you can relate to what Richard's saying, where it's like getting up in front of people can be scary, right? There's that piece, but it sounds like it's a little bit deeper for you. Is that right?
Oh yeah. It's,
Okay.
it's, it's way, yeah, way deeper for me. It's
Okay,
been like
so
that ever
we'll
since
we'll get there for sure. But this part in the afternoon where you're feeling kind of untethered and you're not sure what to do, one task I can see that can happen maybe before lunch or after lunch. You could actually do this. You said that your afternoons are not your sharpest time, I think is how you described it. How did you describe that? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, it's they're I feel the most kind of scattered, I guess, in the focus and attention is definitely harder to maintain for some reason during like the late morning and early afternoon throughout the day. And for some reason with me at night it's a lot easier. So it's very
Okay.
bizarre. But yeah.
Okay. But would you be able to search for venues or open mic opportunities at that time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Hmm.
Seems like easy enough thing to do, just Googling some things and
Yeah, and then calling places because a lot of times, there's always somebody usually at a bar or something, or at a coffee house that you can get, and somebody's name or email address that you can get that, and then make the emails, contacts for them.
okay, are there other tasks around this that could happen at that same time?
Um, let's see. Let me think. What else? Well, I mean, one thing that's important that I have been thinking about a lot because I have a little bit of a medical background, but I've been thinking about going back to school and I've been thinking about maybe taking classes online. And it'd be ideal to do that since I'm my father's caregiver. And so I was thinking that would be a really good idea is to schedule some kind of a class or two classes in that period because
Okay.
that would definitely keep me engaged and kind of I would feel like I was more productive if there was something like that going on during that
Very
period.
good. Okay, so what are the next steps for that? Is there a local college that you would look for? Is it just looking for classes online? What would that be like?
So the next step, which is something that I have been procrastinating to do, has been to contact the continuing education department here at our local college, the community college here, and ask them, to get started on. Usually, it's like a first you consult with somebody, an advisor for the first time, and they talk about your degrees that you have, and then going forward, what are you looking for in terms of like what kind of a certification or 2 year degree. I'm looking for something that's probably going to be more like 2 year degree.
Okay.
So that whole thing would be like like starting with them, starting with somebody at the point of contact at the college, and then working with them.
And why haven't you done this already? What stopped you?
I don't know. I wish I knew the answer to that.
Okay,
It's just
in coaching, we like to say, I don't know is not allowed. So
Uh, well,
what if you did
honestly,
know? Why have you not picked up the phone?
procrastination, and the more I think about it, I guess things like that. For some reason, I know that they're important, but I guess I do suffer a lot of avoidance issues, and I have a lot of problems with avoiding things. Now, with that, I wonder if it could be things like, you know, the process is so long, and it could be, like it could take for a long time to do, and one of those things. And I just worry that, I just not going to be able to focus with it and stay focused doing it. So it's hard to say, but like a lot of times for me, things that are maybe a little bit more of an undertaking, because I mean, like for the school thing, for example, you would first have that first initial consultation, and then I would have to start looking at classes and schedules, see what worked. Then I have to look at like financial, there's any financial aid available, and it's just a whole thing. And it's hard for me for some reason. I when it comes to big undertakings, I just kind of I put it in the in the back end.
So
And
you said I'm not going to stay focused doing it. Is when you're saying that, are you talking about going from step to step to step, or are you
yeah,
talking about the 2-year degree?
no, I'm talking about step to step. It's very hard for me to start something and then stay focused doing it when it's a longer type thing. Like let's say working at my mother's doing yard work for an hour. That's something very simple for my mind to do because I know to go over there and do it. The school thing is in my mind a little more overwhelming because I start the process and it may take an hour or two, and then I realize that I have to start doing other things that are going to take another couple hours here, another couple hours there. And that has, for some reason, has always just been kind of a hard thing for me to. I get bigger projects have always been kind of harder for me to deal with for
Yeah.
whatever reason.
So what I'd like to offer here is like, what if we just don't look at this as a big project? What if it's simply contacting the continuing education and financial aid and all that? Let's not have it all happen at the same time, which is what's happening in your brain, right? It's kind of
Yeah,
it's all happening at the same time. But it's just, especially when you have an advisor, you could simply, if you're feeling stuck or if you're feeling like you're avoiding something, you could simply go to the counselor or the advisor and just go, can you help me with next steps? What's next here? Or ask yourself, what's just the next step that I have to
yeah,
do here? And not worry so much about timing or getting in at a certain semester but at least you've got the ball rolling. Does that feel more
yeah.
doable?
It does, and it always kind of that when you say that, I always think about that quote. What is it? The journey of a million miles starts with one step, or whatever it
Yeah.
is, and that's something that I realize. There's so many things in my life that for whatever reason it's been so hard to make the first step. I just don't
Mhm.
know what it is. It's I'm sure a lot of it is anxiety. I mean, a lot of it is emotional. It has an emotional side to it, but then at the same time, for people with ADHD, we it is very difficult for us to get started on projects. I'm the worst with it. I mean, it's hard for me to get started on something,
Yeah.
and then kind of follow through with it.
And whenever you're having trouble getting started, the first thing I want you to do is ask yourself, why? What's holding me back here? And just answer your question. Because a lot of times what will happen is we will ask ourselves, like, why am I not doing this? I'm sure you're asking yourself all the time, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Why don't I just get started on this? Well, ask yourself why and then answer the question. And it could be like, I'm just feeling like this is a really big thing. Okay, well,
mhm,
is it a really big thing? And
yeah,
the answer might be yes, or it might be yes, and all I have to do is do this one next step.
mhm,
And that might be helpful. The other thing that I actually talked to the last person that I coached on here is break it down to the smallest thing. Like if it's simply picking up the phone, break it down
mhm,
to that. And maybe give, your continuing education, goal, maybe you just give it 5 or 10 minutes that day. That's all you've got to do. Because too often we will trick our brains into doing something for a really long time and it's a slog. And then next time we go to do that thing, our brain is telling us absolutely not. No,
yeah.
last time that was terrible.
That
You
makes
had
a
a
lot of
thought. Go
sense.
ahead.
Yeah. That's, I mean, I can already imagine that a lot of times when I try to undertake things like maybe um, trying to, get shows and stuff lined up where I kind of tell myself I'm one of those people that always that really kind of, I have to do things. I'm kind of a perfectionist, so when things like like say taking the show thing for example, I it's hard for me because I'm not the most assertive person either, and honestly, I have some issues with with socializing, with people, strangers and things anyway. So I get real like tense when I think about like, okay, I make the first call or the first email to contact this person about playing a show.
Yeah.
And it just because I in my mind it's all these things that these catastrophic things happen, these things like it's not going to happen, they don't want me to play or just weird, irrational things. That's a big problem for me is I got a lot of irrational, streets going on up in my mind, that I go
Yeah.
down.
And they're just thoughts that your brain is offering you to protect you
Yeah.
because putting yourself out there is scary, right?
Yeah.
And your brain is like, let's just not do the scary, hard thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to
That
offer you all these reasons not to.
well, and that's one of the things that with the mindfulness I have been doing lately is it really has been a game changer and because I do realize that once I can start to feel a particular thought I know is going to turn into an obsessive, loop that's going to
Mhm.
go on for hours, even days, maybe. I can ground myself and realize that this is just a thought and it doesn't mean anything. And for so long, it's been so hard for me to, I don't know, for whatever reason, I guess maybe imaginative or creative people have this too, but we really, our thoughts are like us, and to us, they're real, it's real. It's, you know, tangible, and so it's hard for a lot of us, I think, to get into that mode where we realize that our thoughts aren't real. They are just synapses of our brain trying to tell us, to keep itself safe, and it overdoes it, with the
Yeah.
anxiety.
Yeah. Have you heard? I talk about the brain's priorities, which is to like keep us safe, keep us comfortable. And, I can't remember the three that I usually say right now, but that is our brain's priority and it will offer anything for that. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you experienced that when like you stopped drinking, for example, like your brain probably offered you all the reasons you should keep doing that.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. With substance abuse, that's a very big thing. A good example of that is there's a product here in the United States called Kratom. It's something that's going around where it's kind of a thing that people take to feel good. It's sold at all the gas stations, and one of those things is it becomes in itself very addictive. And so my brain, when I quit taking it, is constantly telling me, it made you feel good. It even made you a little more focused. Why not try taking a little bit again? And maybe this time you won't get hooked to it. But it's
Mhm.
always the same thing. It always happens. So
Yeah. So one thing that you talked about, like you didn't call them that, but like the ruminating thoughts or the ones that like grab a hold and they kind of take you through the day. One tool that I really like to use, I use this myself, I offer it to my clients, is once you have one of those thoughts that you notice it's like you're starting to go in a tailspin of negativity, what I want you to do is grab a hold of that thought and go, or I could be thinking, and finish that sentence. And it's something just, it's not positive thinking that won't work. It's not you lying to yourself. If the thought isn't true, your brain is just going to dismiss it. It's going to go, no, that's not facts. But
yeah,
something neutral at least. Like it could be, say you're thinking about doing an open mic and you're like, they're going to hate my music, and you start going down that road. It's like, or I could be thinking somebody is going to connect with this music.
yeah,
Or I could be thinking this is just a good experience for me. Or I
yeah.
could be thinking, and do about three things that are true to you and
Mhm.
don't have to be a positive thought, can even just be neutral, but just to get you in a better place. And about 3 rounds of that will shut down that thought. And I
That's a
really
great
like,
idea.
yeah,
Yeah,
or I
I
could
mean,
be thinking.
to me, that's one of the things about it is that well, me personally, I know, and I've talked to other people with ADHD and OCD that are like that. We are so certain that the thoughts we're thinking are what's going to happen. For whatever reason.
Facts.
We are like, okay, this is what's going to happen. So trying to train my brain to say I have no idea that this is what's going to happen because it hasn't happened. There's other things could happen, good things that could happen,
Yeah.
and that does work. That does work in kind of stopping the roller coaster from going.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
there's in coaching, we call it worrying ahead of time.
mm.
And what do they say? Only 30% of the things that we worry about actually happen.
Oh yeah, and even less than that probably for me. I mean, because
Yeah.
I work so much about so many things, and it's probably way less than that even. So I mean, yeah, it's you just we become our own kind of like horror movie or something. We think we know what's going to happen. It's going to be catastrophic, but it never turns out that way. At least for me. And
Yeah.
so,
So, and that's just a good thing to notice. Like you've got all this evidence that the worry is unnecessary, but your brain is practiced in worry. And so
mm-hmm.
you can just go as soon as you notice the worry, probably makes you feel a certain way in your body, which as ADHDers, sometimes we're not very connected to our bodies until we're like in it. And then we're like, why am I feeling terrible? What's
Yeah,
happening here? It's like, oh, well, that's because I've been worrying for the past 30 minutes about this thing.
yeah,
So that's a good break. Let's jump into the mindset of performing.
okay.
What happens for you? Like, what are you, when's the last time you performed live?
Ugh. It was actually not too long ago. I was at an open mic, but again, it was one of those things where I for whatever reason, I whenever I do perform, my mind is completely 100% not there with my performance. It's scanning, it's looking for people who I think might be bored, might not like it. It's going through an avalanche of negative thoughts about like just anything else. It's so weird. It's hard to explain, but it's just like your brain is screaming almost that it shouldn't be doing this, and it's I don't know why it's like that. I think in my past, if I ever had any kind of major thing, and like any kind of traumatic thing, and there's been a couple of things when I was younger, when I was in doing performance where maybe I cracked a note, but for whatever reason, it's just so hard for me to stay focused on doing it, because I know that if I could do that, that's, where I want to be. I want to be a performer who's focused on actually performing and not caring about everything else.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's very hard for me to do that.
What I want you to notice is just some of the stories that you're telling about yourself that might not be helpful. And like your language around this is, I've never been able to. So,
Mm-hmm.
what is something that would kind of just move you towards being open with being more in your performance instead of scanning the audience or looking for something that might go wrong?
Well, a good thing that actually kind of happened a little bit towards the end of when I performed last time, because I was performing for maybe about, I don't know, 10 minutes, and I started to really think I should be focused on my playing right now and my like the guitar and stuff, and focus on hitting the right notes and kind of trying to give as best of a performance. And I noticed that when I started thinking that, it did start kind of putting me more into this mindful thing of I am here right now performing in front of these people. I am not in this alternate universe where people are, they think that I suck or whatever, and they're, whatever. This is what's happening now. And that for me is such a major thing that I feel that if I can continue to let that grow, this whole thing of really existing in the now and learning that I'm here now doing this, that's going to help me in everything with life, especially with anxiety and stuff, because
Yeah.
it's just a whirlwind of stories that's going around, and it really affects us from doing things, actually, physically doing things. It's
Yeah.
it's just
And where I'm grabbing a hold of this in other areas, and I put this down in the notes that I'm taking here, is you said I suffer from avoidance. And
oh
you
yeah,
can see how the telling that story whatever we're thinking becomes our result, right?
Yeah.
Our thoughts create our feelings, which make us take or not take certain actions and get us the results that we're getting. And
Mhm.
so I would just start to grab a hold of these little things that you're thinking about yourself. I think you're in a really good place with the fact that you've found a depression medication that's working well for you. And you're doing your mindfulness. This is a really good place just to start noticing those thoughts that are not helpful. But one thing with your performance that might be helpful, and it sounds like you did that, but maybe a little phrase that you could offer yourself when you notice, because it's practiced. You're going to go back to scanning the audience. It's something that you've done a lot, and just reminding yourself, like, come back.
Yeah.
Something gentle you can say to yourself that's simple, that cues you to go, okay, I know I should be worrying about my music here, and that would come back be something that would be helpful, like when you notice
Yeah.
you're off.
Yeah, it would, because it's kind of like I would be telling myself,
Is it
I mean,
gentle enough? That's the question too.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, I think it is. I think it is, and it would be because I would be coming back to, ultimately it's my performance is what I'm doing, and I guess worrying about what other people think about your performance, when it fills your head, it feels like coming back to being mindful of doing it. I can be good, and that's the other thing. And not perfect about it, but just say I'm going to give my best performance I can, but I'm gonna focus on doing this performance and not let all the other things kind of be the detractors. And whenever I start to veer off to get that, I am getting better. It's real hard for me, and I'm sure a lot of your clients. I don't know. I mean, because I do have OCD too, but it is super hard to pull ourselves, well, leave me anyway, pull myself back to being mindful. It's extremely difficult, but I want to continue to do it, because I understand that over time it gets better, and I think that one of the problems I've had with mindfulness is that I just didn't keep going with practicing it. I gave up on it, and then back to living in your head all day.
I love that you said that, because the moment you said that, I had already just typed, I'm practicing.
Yeah. Okay.
I wanted to offer that to you. So
Yeah.
I I want you to just notice these things that you're saying about yourself. And I want you to be gentle with yourself, because beating ourselves up over it, not helpful. It just adds more negativity, right?
Totally.
And start replacing it with things like, I'm becoming a person who, because I've heard from you a lot, and that was my story too. It's hard. It's hard for me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's not helpful, because it's hard for me, like, kind of lets us take our hands off the wheel a little
Oh yeah,
bit
that's what
and
you're saying.
go, it's just hard for me. There's nothing I can
Yeah,
do about it.
that sets us up for being avoidant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
But yeah, I'm becoming a person who, just reminding yourself that I'm practicing being more mindful when I'm playing my music. Those kind of phrases where they're not super definitive, but they're more helpful to you, and they're true, right? You are
Yeah,
practicing becoming a person who
yeah,
focuses on their
that's a very
music.
good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That makes a lot of sense.
And
Absolutely.
then, as far as the judgment of the audience, some people are going to love your music and some people are not.
Yes,
These are
and
just the facts.
that's the thing. One thing I've read. I remember reading this a while back, but a lot of people with ADHD have these. We have these weird ego things
Mhm.
where a lot of us are like, we think we're, just there's a lot of ego stuff going on. And one of the things that I've been kind of trying to work out more is to be type of person that I've always been a people pleaser. So if when things go against that, that causes conflict and distress, and that causes bad feelings and negative emotions and thoughts. But with things like, because I've been reading a lot about like acceptance, commitment therapy, things like that, accepting that we have no control over what anybody else is going to think and what
Yeah.
we're going to do. We only have control over what we're doing. So, if I can understand that I get to a place where I feel that I'm giving a really good 110% performance each time, that should be enough for me. And, if somebody, and there are people that aren't going to like music and stuff, but I guess,
And
it's,
that means nothing about you.
yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's taking it out of us. And that is such an important thing that I think a lot of people with ADD and OCD and things like that, we are so self-absorbed and in our mind all the time that it's so hard for us to kind of see the forest for the trees, that things are happening outside of our vision, and not in our mind. We're just in our heads, and in our heads is the real life. And to me, it's to successfully kind of have a life that I want to have. I know that I need to kind of break that barrier, and understand that there is a whole world that's happening outside of my mind, and that things that I've always thought are the only way it's going to be are not. That's not how it is. It could be anyway. So it's very difficult to do, but I'm glad that at least at 46 I'm able to figure out that that's what it is, because I'd hate to have waited till I was 80, or just I wish I was 26 and I figured it out, but
We all have
you know
that, right? But
yeah,
yeah, exactly what you're saying. Like I'm going to say it in a different way, but we're making it all up anyway. You're making up what you're deciding that look on that person in the audience's face means. You're making up stories in your head. And so why not tell good stories? Why not
sure,
tell
absolutely.
neutral stories? And I love this because what a better performer you're going to be when you're focused on your music. It's going
Exactly.
to directly result in better output.
I can tell you, I mean, just that last time I performed, I was I know that I was making mistakes and stuff because I kept thinking about everybody else, and I was like, man, I was like, if I could just focus on, because I do a lot of finger picking, a lot of, kind of advanced guitar work stuff. And I'm like, if I could just focus on this, I know I wouldn't be making these mistakes and things. And people probably don't really recognize it, but I do, because when I listen to like recordings of my own live stuff, I can hear those little mistakes. So I know intrinsically that when I'm like really paying attention to my performance, I do extremely well, but I can almost hear it in the live performance where my mind starts to go, and I start to lose focus on what I'm doing. I can even hear it even in the actual playing itself. It
Yeah,
becomes a little bit disjointed and stuff. So I think I bet a lot of creative and performer people go through that who have ADHD.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I heard a coach describe like judgment or people rejecting us or something in a very kind of funny and helpful way.
Mhm.
And she said, basically, you are offering somebody spaghetti. Like, let's say your music, your talent is spaghetti. And the person's like, no, thank you. I don't like spaghetti. Well, there's nothing we can do to change the fact that they don't like spaghetti. It doesn't
Exactly.
mean anything about us. They just don't
Yeah.
like spaghetti, and that's okay. And some people
Yeah.
love spaghetti. And so you
And
can
I
just
think
think
that's
of
where that
yourself. Yeah,
yeah, I think that's where that people pleasing thing comes in, because being hardwired to be a people pleaser, it's always been very difficult when somebody has, they don't necessarily conform to what it is you're trying to do, or tell them there's just something that isn't, um it's hard to describe, but like you're they have a different idea of it, and it's not something that in your mind is what you wanted to hear. And so that causes all this turmoil, like, is it me, is it me, it's got to be me, it's
mhm,
they don't like me. And but see, it's all coming back to the me thing, and that's why I'm starting to realize that a lot of this a lot of the stuff with therapy and really trying to make ourselves better is to take ourselves out of ourselves, because I think that is a major thing, that if we can kind of bring ourselves out and realize that there's a whole other world, whole other universe that's not in our head, that's when you start seeing really good uh, benefits. And I can already tell that that's been happening the last few days just with
yeah.
mindfulness stuff.
I mean, I can hear it from you describing like how you used to be and then some changes that you've made. You
Yeah,
are you are changing, and that's amazing.
yeah,
Good job. Good work. It is work, right?
yeah. It is. It's very hard work. It's not easy at all. It's not easy at all.
So I'm going to recommend a book to you. Are you a book person?
Absolutely, I love books.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there's a book called Loving What Is, and it's by Byron Katie. It's kind of a different name. And she teaches you in that book how to question your thinking.
Okay.
And that's super helpful. Another author that makes me think of another author. We've been talking a lot about thoughts, right? And you're very cognizant that like Our thoughts are optional. They're
Mhm.
not the facts. Like you now know
Now
this.
I'm getting that point now, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and gosh, I'm his name is escaping me right now, but very famous author. And he just talks about like your thoughts are like on a conveyor belt. And
Mhm.
you just happen to like pick a box up off the conveyor belt, and that's your thought. And you could
Yeah,
easily just put it back on the conveyor belt and just let it go.
absolutely.
And
Separating it, making it a separate thing. And again, once that is what's been so hard for me. And one of the things I've been thinking about is I've been thinking this way for 46 years. So I can't
Mhm.
expect things to change overnight.
Exactly.
Mindfulness is going to take time. These things are going to take time, but making my thoughts appear like there's the whole thoughts on a leaves on a stream metaphor where your thoughts are leaves on a stream and just
Yeah,
letting
it's
them
very
go.
similar.
Yeah, and that's to me that is very, very it makes a lot of sense. So it's just for me the difficult thing is always been consistently doing it. Because like I say, I in the past I've done it for maybe a good couple weeks, even 2 or 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and then I just for whatever reason I guess I just kind of get lazy with doing it, or just kind of think it's too much, and then I just stop doing it, and it's been 2 years since I've really started being mindful again. But something's different this time. I feel that this time I feel a bit more like it's gonna stick. So I
Well,
feel
the
good
good
about
news
that.
is you've got your mind with you wherever you go. So you can always do mindfulness work. And
Absolutely.
mindfulness work can be very simple. It can just really be looking at a thought that we're thinking and
Mhm.
going, is that right? Just getting
Yeah.
curious about it and questioning it. And another thought that I'll offer you is I'm getting better every day. Like, what if you just told yourself that, like, every time you're like, oh no, I'm going to lose it. I'm not going to keep doing this thing. Just remind yourself, like, I'm getting better every day.
Yeah. That sounds great. No, I definitely would try
It
this.
takes
These
away
are wonderful ideas. Yeah.
the pressure
Absolutely.
of like having to change. You're right.
Yeah.
46 years is a long time to be thinking one way and then try to change to another way of thinking. And hard, I'm offering you this personally because hard was my story. Everything's
Mhm.
hard. Life is hard. And it caused a lot of overwhelm. It caused a lot of just a lot of negative emotion. And one thing that a coach offered me that I grabbed a hold of was what if it were easy? And that is, going and getting the 2-year degree or doing the mindfulness work or following a new morning routine or whatever it is. Like, what if it were easy? That opens up your brain. Not only does it take the pressure off, but it opens up your brain to like the possibility of
Exactly.
this being easy.
There's an alternate road. It's not always the same road that you're always on. That's the thing that I'm starting to learn is that there are alternate roads, there are alternate ways of living, there's alternate ways of thinking, and just the rigidity, and I don't know where that comes from. I have some ideas, maybe from familial, genetics, but there's a rigidity there, and I think that for me, I'm going to find the best success is going to come from being more flexible and being more malleable when it comes to allowing other particular things to happen, and giving that time,
And
giving it.
a good way to balance that rigidity too is what else is possible?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I know what you mean about that rigidity because before getting certified in coaching, I was really a very much black and white thinker.
Yeah,
Like it is
exactly.
this way or it is this way. This is
Hmm.
right, this is wrong. And coaching really helped me, and it helps me with my clients, especially because I can have clients with all different kinds of like backgrounds and thoughts and opinions and things like that. And I can just take it all and go, yes, that is your reality. That is what is true for you. Yes. And that's like getting in the gray, right?
Yeah,
Where it's not just the
absolutely.
black and white anymore. And so I think that's what you're doing in your life is you're getting in the gray with your thoughts and
Yeah,
with what's possible for you.
yeah. I'm getting there now, and one of the big things that's making me get there is I am 46, and 50. I just 50 is a number, but for me, 50, I really want to be on a different trajectory. I want my life to be different, and I have. Well, I'll be 47 in about 2 or 3 months, so I have a good 3 years, and I know it's not going to be perfect, but I just want to be able to say that I made the attempt and I'm trying to do these things. That's what's important for me. So
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Richard. It was so nice to meet you. I appreciate you being vulnerable. This is going to help so many people that are dealing with the same kind
yeah,
of things that you're
absolutely.
dealing with. I love that you're showing the possibilities, and I'm looking forward to you telling me that you did a live performance.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll definitely let you know how that went.
All
Yeah,
right. All
thanks a
right.
lot for this opportunity. I appreciate it. It's awesome. Thank
Oh,
you.
all right. Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
All right. Bye bye.